Brains is a good answer. Tonight I have assembled an expert panel to tell me why we have 18 points about zombies that we all love and adore because they're awesome games instead of dinosaurs. So what we're going to talk about tonight is a little bit about the genre in general, because zombie games, I think, provide a certain level of fascination to us that is very interesting because there are many different ways to look at it. We have fast zombies, we have slow zombies, we have games where you are a protector, we have games where you are an aggressor against zombies. We have games where it's post-apocalyptic. We have games where it is in the midst of the zombie outbreak. We have games where it's many years past the zombie outbreak. And this fascinates us to a level that I find super, super interesting because there's a wonderful sort of level of writing, sandboxing, and playground to playing in regards to zombies. And I think that is what fascinates us at the end of the day about this particular genre. So what I would like to do is go ahead and start off by having each of our panelists sort of tell you a little bit about themselves, the company that they work for, the game that they're making, their particular slice of how they feel they're telling the zombie genre story, and then from there we're going to discuss a little bit about how we feel the evolution of this particular genre occurs and where we think the future is, because I think it's safe to say it's got a pretty bright future. So with that, I will lead off.
Sure. So I'm Dean Paul, otherwise known as Rocket. We'll see if people are still saying that once the standalone ships. But I was creator and project lead on DayZ, being developed by Bohemian. I think my claim to fame is probably that out of the entire panel, my zombies are the most broken. So broken, we're actually redesigning them now. So so.
I might argue that the genre has advanced enough that we can have categories of broken zombies.
Yeah, broken zombies, sure. I think as well about your dinosaur point. So we actually, when I was doing the mod, I actually designed the zombies on the Velociraptors from Jurassic Park.
Awesome. All right, I'm Jeff Strain. I'm the founder of Undead Labs. We're the creators of State of Decay. Thank you. So, we looked at the zombie genre. The founders of our company are all huge fans of the zombie genre. And the focus we took was a little bit different than the games that come before, which we thought had done a great job of covering the horror aspects, covering kind of the minute-by-minute survival aspects. And we wanted to step back and look at it more from the standpoint of long-term survival and resource management and how you plan for tomorrow and next month and next year. And so, our game is very much more focused on kind of the simulation aspects of surviving the zombie apocalypse. And that's something that I think, we were excited to do, just coming out of zombie movies and, you sit around with your buddies and you're like, what would you do? Where would you go? Would you try to go board up to Costco so that you have lots of supplies? Would you go try to take high ground? Would you get on a boat and go to an island? And we really wanted to start exploring making a game that lets you test out some of those ideas. So, that's fun.
Hi, my name is Chet. I was project lead on Left 4 Dead 1 and 2. Our version of the zombie apocalypse was, we talked about this a lot with Left 4 Dead 1 in particular, is you got started, you had no idea what was going on. And we wanted, because that's what would happen to you in the real zombie apocalypse, right? You're just thrown in, you have no idea, you have some simple tools, and you kind of run with it. And so we wanted to always keep kind of that kind of simple flavor of the world going on. You hadn't had time to really pause or reflect. You wanted to just keep running and going. And I think my favorite description I ever heard of Left 4 Dead was, if you're playing with 4 friends, it's this awesome co-op experience. If you're playing with 4 strangers, it's probably what the real zombie apocalypse is. It's just chaos. And we do have, there are some dinosaurs in our game now, thanks to modders. So we've opened up the workshop, and you can play as Velociraptors if you want, which is pretty nice. We actually had the guy who made that, Splinks, up at our office as an intern during the summer. And so we continue to support the game with kind of opening up tools for modders to play with it, a lot of scripting stuff, a lot of new game modes get made, and it's pretty fun to see what people are doing with it.
I'm Pierre Charette. I am a writer at Telltale Games. Worked on works of Robert Kirkman. Our take on zombies is really centered around the pressure that a zombie apocalypse puts on people and how it affects their relationships with one another. As evidenced by the first season, and I think that it's more about the guy around the corner from you and maybe less about the zombie around the corner, because that's becoming a given in the genre in our take on it. So.
I'm Dennis Lennart. I'm also from Telltale Games, so he stole my thunder a little bit. I was a director on season 1 of The Walking Dead, and I'm directing the first episode of season 2 of The Walking Dead right now. And yeah, like Pierre said, our focus is definitely on the characters. It's, the zombies are the threat, and it's, we sort of use it as a little sandbox to see how not only other characters, just, as normal humans in this world would react, but also for players, giving you a lot of tough choices. It's fun to see the results, which are always surprising to us, of how people will actually react when put in this kind of situation.
So one of the things I find interesting about the genre in general is that it moved from, classically, if we think about zombie games, it was shoot the zombies, right? It was just shoot the zombies for bad guys. And I think what the narrative has changed to, and you guys are a great representative of sort of all of the ways that it's changed, is now it's become a lot more about your role in this horrible future world where zombies exist, as opposed to, oh, you're going to shoot the zombies, level up, and then you're going to go to the next level and shoot more zombies in a different place. So when we think about narrative, right, when we think about storytelling, which I think is the key shift that the zombie genre has taken as a game platform in the past probably 5-6 years, it's really along the lines of telling a story, as opposed to zombies are like the dots in Pac-Man, or zombies are like, whatever, they're the enemy, but that's just become a side story almost. So from the standpoint of telling a story, when you think about what you want to establish as your baseline, you each have a different view. I think each game that you describe has a different view of that. What goes into your mind when you're sitting down for the first time and you're thinking, okay, we're going to make a sequel to whatever game, or we're going to make a new game? What narratively is your primary focus from the storytelling perspective?
So for us, it's giving players the tools to tell their own story. It's and that's why we talk about State of K in terms of a simulation. When we think of a potential sequel, we always look at it in terms of what new systems can we create to give players more tools for their own experience to evolve that is in line with a zombie apocalypse. And obviously, it doesn't do a lot to give people the ability to fabricate a merry-go-round, because that's not really a tool that's going to be useful in the zombie apocalypse.
I'm not sure the Dead Rising would agree.
Right, yeah. But we look at all the choices that people would have to make that are so well portrayed in series like The Walking Dead and great zombie movies out there that establish the core of the canon. And we try to find ways to model those choices so that it's not just kind of a strictly what do you want to do, A or B? And okay, here's the pre-scripted consequences of that one way or the other. But instead it feeds into the simulation engine. So I think, for us, our unique slice of it is we want to move progressively more and more down the path of simulating the apocalypse, where the zombies, as you say, aren't really the end goal. The goal is not to go shoot zombies. The goal is to see if you can play the game and survive for 3 months or a year with a realistic simulation reacting to your choices around it.
When I think of State of Decay, especially, when I look at that particular game and its ideas around resource gathering, right, and its focus on the player not necessarily having to fight off the zombies. When you guys are thinking about that, it's like, how do you keep that from becoming, for lack of a better way to put it, just a grind?
A grind, yeah.
Right.
Well, one of the big questions we had going into development was, the whole notion of permadeath, and how's that really going to go down? It violates game design 101, right? You do not permanently kill somebody's character. And we had the great good fortune to have another game come out while we were in development that I think very solidly validated the concept of permadeath. But what's interesting to us is that that applies, there's kind of a larger philosophy around permadeath, which is the idea of entropy. That is something that creates pressure in a post-apocalyptic world. That is something that is a major narrative theme of zombie films and books, things like Day-to-Day Armageddon, which if you haven't read that, you absolutely should. It's a phenomenal book. But this concept of creeping entropy, as the weeks go by, as the months go by, you're depleting the world and the world is depleting around you. And what's working today may not work tomorrow. And so it is true that resource gathering can be a grind, particularly if it never changes, right? If the way you gather resources and where you gather resources and the supply of resources never changes. But what we want to try to capture is, this may have worked today, but it's not going to work tomorrow because you permanently deplete the world and you're watching this entropy gathering around you. And so permadeath is not just a character concept, it can be applied to the world at large in terms of resources, in terms of relationships with other characters. And I think all of that is very much in keeping with what makes the zombie genre really powerful and emotionally compelling.
So Chet, when I think about like Left 4 Dead, one of the things that I enjoy as a player is how much of the story you leave to be discoverable, right? So from a narrative standpoint, I can either jump out of the safe room and just start shooting zombies, or I can pause and listen to what is essentially going to be a narrative that's going to unfold for me. How do you guys balance that between the player choice of one or the other?
Well, I mean, we had kind of two things happening. One is we knew people were going to play it again and again. It's made that you're not going to play one campaign once, but multiple times. So let's not give you the story just the first time. Every time you play it, little things come out. Little things only sometimes have been odds of coming out. And the other thing is, really, I don't want you to come away saying, hey, remember this time when Zoe saved Francis? I want you to say, hey, remember step 2 when I saved you? Right. And I pulled you up. It's like those stories that arise up out of the play. Since we are online, it's just 4-player co-op. It's like those are the interesting stories. And you see people who are really bad at games. They only play with people who are really good at games and help them. They help them up. Like my wife is not really good at games. And I'll charge ahead and get killed or get knocked down. She can come help me back up. And that's what we come away from. I don't even think she knows the character names, right? She doesn't care.
Well, everyone knows Zoe startled the witch.
What?
Everyone knows Zoe startled the witch.
But yes, right. Like it's this thing that happens where it's about people playing the moment, and that's why it's always like if you're going to play, have a headset, have a microphone. That experience is so different then.
And when you're designing for that scenario, right? When you're writing for that scenario, when you're actually like thinking to yourself, that's my goal. My goal is I want to create an amazing experience, and there's so few writers on the face of the earth who would say out loud like you just did, I don't care if they know the character's name, because they invest so much in writing that character. You're creating an experience. How do you optimize sort of in your own mental process of creating that story towards making sure that happens? It's a gameplay thing, isn't it?
Well, a lot of it's you just play through a ton and you want to capture, you never want to guess intent. Guessing player intent often ends with those awkward moments where you're like, I don't want to do that, I don't want to say that, like, ooh. Right. But you try to gather like kind of the excitement and emotion and run with that. If someone almost just died in their back and their character's super excited. If you think of the characters really as buddies in the adventure with you, not as you playing them particularly, and they're just amplifying what you're feeling, what you're going through, and they're adding to the tension and excitement of it. And that's kind of how we looked at it. We wanted to make sure that never once would you go, wait, what did you say? And that if you didn't catch what he said, you were lost. Like that was failure.
Right.
And so we just wanted to make sure that we were always kind of repeating a little bit of it as we go across, and also just them amplifying what you were feeling without us guessing your absolute intent.
Right. No, that makes sense. So when I think about Walking Dead specifically, you guys went down the route of another common, well, not common is probably not the right way to put it, but another thing that you see in the zombie genre, which is the protector role, right? Where you are a guardian, Clementine, and you invested so much in that. Like I felt so much that I was Clementine's when you had the caps, everything you guys did in communicating about the title centered around Clementine.
Sure.
Like from that perspective, you made a conscious choice. How hard is that to say, well, how do we balance between the choices a character makes in a game that we're creating where player choice affects the narrative, and this protector role where how do we prevent the player from always just biasing towards, oh, I'll do anything with Clementine?
Sure. Which, yeah, I mean, that's definitely a thing that we ran into is, we found that people, really starting with episode 2, there was a moment I remember in a playtest where there's these two brothers and you basically get held captive by them and you find out they're cannibals, and then everyone comes out and the first thing,
Okay,
yeah, spoiler.
I'm flashing back. I'm flashing back and I'm getting a little upset. That was a tough moment in the game.
Well, and what's funny is that when we were watching in playtest, pretty much everyone gets out of the barn and they kill the first brother just because he's a threat to David Clementine.
Right.
And then there's this great moment where you see Clementine scream and watching you as you stab this guy. And after that, in the playtest, almost no one killed the second brother. Like, they get the option. And it's still like a revenge thing, and they know that he's a threat to Clementine if they leave him out there in the world. But people, again, became more protective of her emotional state rather than her physical state at the time, which was a crazy cool thing for us to see. Not as expected as that.
Well, you guys have, I think it's unusual. The reason I think one of your slices is super unique because you have that wonderful moment in the game where I am shown what everyone else chose.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All my choices in the game are categorized and recorded, and then you show me how much, that's got to be a lot of pressure as a writer at the end of the day when you're doing playtesting to say, oh, 99% of people chose this thing. Maybe that might be too obvious. So from a writing perspective, how do you incorporate that data?
Usually I'm going to review it if it's but I think it's you go through and you deconstruct it and figure out how you weighted it one way or the other and allow the opportunity to do better next time.
Can I just ask, is your goal to balance that? Would you like to believe that across the entire play population you're getting roughly
Definitely, yeah.
choices?
That's when we feel best. Yeah, when you get a stat screen at the end that has like a 50-50 divide, that's always the happiest we are. And if we see one that's weighted super in one direction, then we always try to say, what can we do to, after playtest, go in and really like reinforce the other angle. And it's interesting. It's sort of like you would tune mechanics in a game where you're always just, oh, everyone keeps dying at this part. How do we make this a little easier? Everyone is really good at this part. How do we make it a little harder? And we do that with these moments. And so much of the draw of the game are these really tough choices. And our goal is always to have two bad choices and to make them both equally bad, so that you don't ever choose one and feel like you got away with the right choice.
I'm not going to say I threw my controller at the floor. I threw my controller at the
But
floor.
we generally also have arguments within the office, and if someone gets into a heated debate and then walks out of the room, they usually walk back in and go, "This is good."
Yeah.
So the conflict in that sense drives the writing process. Your writers' room must be like foam walls and stuff so that people don't hurt each other.
Yeah, it's actually funny. I remember a time with one of our guys in marketing played the game and was so angry. I remember seeing him just downstairs walking by and he was just like, played the episode, pretty pissed off. I was like, whoa, okay, cool. But then we found out, and talking to him, it was actually really interesting because he had chosen one of these options in like a big choice moment. And he just thought it was like, everyone's going to do that. This is stupid. We're making this game. We want 50-50 splits. But then there was like 5 other people who got in a huge argument with him around the water cooler about how he was an idiot and that he only chose that because of some other reason. And everyone's going to choose this other one. And that's when we know we're doing right. It's when people are so passionate about that no one's going to choose the other choice.
It's a funny thing. Your game revealed to me because I role-played your game as myself. Like I made all the choices as if I was in that situation, and I found out I'm kind of an asshole. I made some choices that I literally at the end of the game, I was like, man, I'm brutal.
Well, apparently they wish 50% of the rest of the population is an asshole too, right?
They're hoping for that. So talking about data, which is a new thing for a writer and for game production, right? You're thinking about this genre, which is super specific. And I think it's one of the reasons why I think the genre is so popular, is because there's so many different ways to look at it. You guys have incorporated data in terms of how you think about choices that people make. Chet, I have to assume you've done the same thing as your game being multiplayer. You guys probably analyze that. How do you think the future will evolve in terms of, well, we made this story, and during playtest, thanks to player data, the following things are like we didn't call it right, or we didn't do it right. And I guess Chet, you can probably start first, but I mean that's just kind
yeah,
of.
we have gobs of data because we did this thing that was kind of interesting is we would do polls for the while in the game. We would ask for feedback from the community, and often we would get this thing in the forums. They would think like, you guys have the problem that we were done for asking the question because the answer was obvious. The poll in game would be different, and then the data for what they actually did in game is different. And so there's that perception problem, and then it's going through. And so yeah, we use data to see if things aren't being finished, or if everyone's just always not using that one like goodness brand choices, a lot like that. Which, yeah, just a little plug is I hope people continue to use data for gameplay stuff, not for just monetization. I think right now it's become this kind of dirty word.
Yeah,
everyone's using it for like, I'm gonna get more pennies out of people. But
When they like to buy these special shotguns?
yeah, exactly. There's still a lot of value in getting and tuning that gameplay and giving that good experience for people. And we're always looking at these dots. But I know from Left 4 Dead, we went to CS:GO where we captured every single bullet fired. And we're just doing this joke of like, if people spray over here, they tend to win. And it's like there was just like as they left the beginning, they would just spray there, just screw around with it. I don't know, right? Because it seemed like the winners did that. So I would do that, still lost. So you can't trust all the data.
Although I will say, I think it's interesting in the Telltale case that you guys were actually using data gathering for almost perverse motivations, right? I mean, generally developers will gather that kind of data so we can figure out what is the right choice for the game, and you guys almost use it to push it down so that there is no right choice. I think that's interesting.
It's fun, and we actually track with our system everything you do in the game, every line of dialogue, no matter how arbitrary it seems, is a potential spreadsheet of data that a writer for the next episode has going in to sort of find the moments for callbacks or see most people generally are nice to this character. Let's try to swing that balance a little bit. And really interesting.
With Daisy, we kind of went in a crazy direction. So we did do heat maps of where most people were dying. But because of the way we approached the game, we just sort of looked at it and went, well, that sucks for the people who go there. They won't go to Cherno,
Well, it's not level designed by committee.
Yeah.
You're saying.
No, they were gathering data for their own amusement.
As a game player, like one side of me is going, man, that's. But as like a person who's interested in the genre, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Right, if you're going to do the data thing, you have to do it and do it well. Whereas I think what we were aiming for, the particular experience we were wanting for, if we'd started to turn it and try and manufacture it, then the game never would work.
Right.
And I think that's what, if you look at the Telltale, it's a good example. When you do it, you have to do it well. We knew we couldn't do it and do it well. So we were like, we're going to turn our game world over to the players. And then we were just sort of watching the carnage to see.
I would just like to say, this is going beyond the zombie genre just a little bit,
Sure.
but relative to the question of what you do with data, it can be a little bit dangerous sometimes because, the very specific example you used of if there's a particular weapon in a game that we use, we want to know that, and we do too. That's how we use the data. But I recall back to my fantasy MMO days, and one of the interesting things was we would look and we'd say, here are a set of playable characters that people have, and let's track who chooses which character so we know which ones people don't like. And of course, there was always the ugly character that only 10% or 5% of the people ever chose, right? I think a gnome or something, right? Nobody wants to be the gnome. And yet, the fact that ugly character exists and that 5% of the people select that ugly character or that gnome character, that you're just like, why would anybody want running around our world and seeing that actually winds up adding pepper to the game.
Yeah.
That I think is really important. So we track tons of data as well. A lot of it we try to feed back into the simulation engine so that rather than us kind of making decisions and pre-balancing, our hope is that the game will react to things. Some of the data obviously is kind of design feedback, but we try really hard to look at that with almost a jaded eye and not just go optimize for the balances, because a little bit of, a little bit of something ugly, a little bit of something that nobody else wants can really, especially in an online game, can really make an interesting environment.
No, and I absolutely agree that there's probably a whole other panel to be done on just how data informs. But one of the reasons I find it interesting is because each of you are using data in a different way for a specific genre. So, especially in the zombie genre, where, again, when people think of the zombie apocalypse, they tend to think of it as a sort of a very monolithic thing, but each of you have a completely different take on it. And so starting from Dean on down, it's sort of like, why do you think, the specific question is, why do you think this genre, number one, is attractive to people? Number two, why do you think it's, for lack of a better phrase, has legs? This is going to be, zombie games aren't going, you guys are all making completely different games. One might look at you and see they're all competitors, but you're all telling completely different stories within a really specific set, and that's very rare.
Yeah, well, I guess DayZ was actually born out of trying to make a psychological survival simulation tool for training soldiers. So I guess one of its biggest inspirations was The Road, and that has no zombies.
Yeah.
But I think, let's say I made DayZ about, based on an apocalyptic scenario based on peak oil. I mean, nobody, I wouldn't be sitting in a panel. There's not a peak oil apocalypse panel. But yeah, so I think zombies just provide, from my perspective, a really good vehicle and mechanism to put the player in a situation that you can start building and layering the tensions on. Because that's what I wanted to do with DayZ, was have all these subtle little layers of tension and horror inside the game, so that the player had a specific emotional experience that wasn't controlled by the game or anything else. It was kind of controlled by their mind. And I think that zombies just provide that very, not packaged, but people understand it. It's got an element of body horror. It gives you an excuse to have people shooting other people without feeling too guilty. So, yeah, and I think people are, and today's times with infection and stuff like that, it's something people understand and they're scared of, and they're familiar with. So it just provides a basic vehicle. Especially if you're not good at making narrative. You can just, like, there's no narrative in DayZ. It's just because, oh well, it's zombies. So. Because zombies, yeah.
I think a big appeal of the zombie genre is actually just the fact that you're living in a post-apocalyptic world that's not all ripped up by nuclear Armageddon or a comet passed too close to the Earth or anything like that. And there are no more rules. Right? It's complete indulgence of, every rage fantasy you've ever had, but, absolutely backed up by the necessity of survival. And I think whether it's looting stores or stealing cars or smashing windows just for the hell of it, or shooting propane tanks just because they explode pretty, or, just sitting out with your lawn chair on top of the roof of the sipping gas and, popping zombies in the head just for the sheer hell of it, right? You don't have to feel guilty at indulging all those kind of juvenile fantasies, and I think that's a big part of it, is just a play factor. Certainly in, an open world type of sandbox game, I think that's a big part of it. And, it's not kind of pulling, you don't always have to pull the emotional heartstrings, right? Certainly it's punctuated by moments of real ethical choice, but in between, you can just indulge in your inner chaos.
Yeah, I mean, to that end, for people to jump into a game and play it and have the same common foe, there's no grayness in the foe here, right? It's not political, it's not a religious thing, it's just saying these are zombies killing you. We had one person ask once in a playtest what my motivation was. It's like, no, you're gonna die. I don't want to be around you with real zombie lives. Other than that, it just goes, and it's just a great thing that works with, like vampires or something like that, where it's a singular enemy. I'm playing State of Decay, and I see one zombie exploring a house, I kill it. I'm like, okay. I see another one, I kill him, and it's, wait, there's more coming. Now in trouble, right? And it's that sinking, overwhelming, like, oh God, I could have, one or two, they would have only been the ones who showed up, I'd have been fine. But now I've almost caused my own chaos and grief because I decided to have a hubris about killing them, and now I've got to run, right? And so that, to me, is like, the fun of it is it's just not the singular enemy, but it is overwhelming force that's always lurking around the corner and ready to kind of explode at you.
And I'll just add one point that I think is really good about that. I previous life made a lot of fantasy games, and You know, you have to put so much work up front into, okay, you know, who's the king and who's the big evil guy and, you know, who's invading who and why do you give a shit, right? It's like you have to educate the player up front about why they care. What I loved, what was so refreshing about working in the zombie genre, and we always used to just say, you know, just put you at the end of Santa Monica Pier with a baseball bat and zombies coming out of the fog. That's it, right? No wall of text, just, you know what to do. that's fun.
No, and I think that's a really overwhelming feeling that it's not going anywhere, and just attaching to this feeling that it's not worth it, this sort of nihilism of this thing is this terrible, terrible thing, and very rarely are the stories centered around cure. It's always centered around survival, and I think everyone's sort of been in a position where they felt like the world is against them, and it all is going well for me, and feeling like, okay, you got to push on, you got to take it day by day. It's sort of approach you take in your own life. I think tapping into that is the stuff that really resonates with people. And I think that that's the stuff that's really interesting for us when we approach problem.
Yeah.
To me, it's really personal. Like zombies are
I've had personal experiences.
You know, it's
I think we all.
yeah, exactly.
During the crunch, especially.
Yeah. But you know, I mean, it's instead of just some other threat, this is a person that used to be just like me, and there's something really weird and unsettling about that, especially knowing, you know, like say in Kirkman's world in The Walking Dead, everyone who dies is going to become one of these things, and it's just it's weird. Like I always try to push for more budget on like making the zombies look like people.
Yeah.
You know, just this one has this interesting trucker hat, or this one is wearing a wedding dress, or just, you know, whatever. Like trying to, I always get shot down by it, but
It's interesting. I mean, that's a great point. Somebody at some point, I mean, assuming the law of averages, if the zombie apocalypse happens quickly, someone's getting married.
yeah,
Just the law of averages. So
yeah. To
But
me,
it's hard to do that, because I know it's something we tried to do as well. Like, if so many times we scrap the designs of how we're going to do the zombies, because it's hard to balance that horror element and identifying something as a zombie versus having something like, say, that people look at it and go, that was a person.
Yep, and there's a moment that I really like in episode 1 of season 1 of Walking Dead, where in our game, where you basically find Lee's brother has been turned into a zombie, and you have to kill him in order to get the keys to get into the drugstore. And it just, like, that was a moment that we all, you know, it sounded cool on paper, but once you saw it and were actually playing through it, and you felt like this real connection, and that's the stuff that I love and always, like I said, I'm trying to push for more of in our games, is to try and make the zombies just seem like as real people as you can. It's really interesting.
I don't know if anyone else has played Project Zomboid here, but I've been playing a lot of that, and I had a game of it just the other day, and I opened the door to this house, and I saw there were 3 people who were zombies inside of it, and I just got this whole, oh my god, like this was this family. I quickly run out the door and shut it. But it really brought that sort of home to me. It was like, you know, as I was foraging around these people's houses, trying to find food in that, but here I felt like I'd come across this family that had all turned into zombies, and it had that, I don't know, gave me that little moment.
I think it's the undercurrent that fascinates me about the genre, is that it doesn't matter if you have fast zombies or slow zombies. It doesn't matter if there's a lot of zombies.
Well, it does matter.
Well, I'm talking about my experience. So it doesn't really matter necessarily the zombies. It's that undercurrent of they did used to be people.
Yeah.
I think that is probably the undercurrent that makes the genre so fascinating in how many ways you can slice it, is because they didn't make a choice. They didn't have any way, you know, so to speak, to stop things. So from that perspective, I find it interesting. This is a question actually specifically for Telltale. It's like, when you're dealing with that type of story where especially there's another group of IP around you. You've got the comic book, you've got the show, right? You're dealing with someone else's intellectual property. And they have stories, backstories about who was a zombie and who wasn't, who became a zombie and who wasn't. How do you factor that into your writing and design, and how free do you feel, to the extent that you can, you know, answer that, is like sort of like, where's your boundaries? What, like if they came to you and said, no, you can't do that. You can't tell that zombie story.
And does Kirkman review his script? Does he like it?
Yeah, he's involved. He likes it. Fortunately, we've been lucky.
Yeah, Kirkman's awesome about that stuff. And really, because a zombie story covers an entire world, we can just be in the part of the world where characters that he has had don't exist. And in season 1, we definitely had some cameos from characters.
Yes.
Like that, but we've had the freedom to sort of explore just people dealing with this situation. And I don't think we've ever really felt tied to any specific storyline that he's had. He's been cool with letting us do our own thing in our corner of the United States.
It struck me that you guys very much had a path that was pretty clearly laid out to say, go have fun in this world.
Yeah, it's been great about that.
Well, I mean, in fact, in the very beginning, the initial talks were, hey, we're really interested in doing a game based on this series you have. We really like the world. Do we have to do exactly what you were doing in the books? And he basically said, hell no, please don't do that. We already have the books and we have the show.
Right.
And he thought that we understood what he was going for, just the basic concept enough that he just wanted us to actually just go off and do our own thing, something that he can play, not be super involved with every step of the way and kind of see what it's like from the fan's perspective. So.
Okay, that's super cool. So Chet, specifically to you, you guys often have to deal with being so multiplayer focused, right? Your particular fun factor is going to be in situations, right? Independent of the data, like let's say you don't have a playtest, how do you guys focus on that moment that you want to create for the player? And for Left 4 Dead, I'll just tell you, there's one every level that there's one moment where I'm like, oh my God, that was incredible. How do you guys think about that from the perspective of the director, thinking about when the horde comes? What is that just data driven? Is that?
So it's a lot of tuning. So Left 4 Dead 1 was, we try not to have a lot of crunch, we try not to have crazy hours. Left 4 Dead 1 was probably like the hottest product we worked on in just a sense of the entire studio just focused on it. We were working with the Turtle Rock guys who became part of Valve. There was a lot of stuff going on. It was just a very intense experience, and it was our first real, we had done 360 for Orange Box. This was our first one that had all this multiplayer element. There's just a lot of things that needed to happen. And so we just
across a lot of platforms, right, all at the same time.
Yeah, so we were looking at like 24 hours a day. There's people playing Left 4 Dead in our offices towards the end.
Sounds like hell.
Last couple months, we set up couches, we set up just places for people to hang out and play. And I remember, what? Yeah, we would do shifts. It was this weird experience.
I'm on the midnight Left 4 Dead shift.
To me, it all became, we would invite friends over, right? It became this very party thing. I remember this animator, Jamal, sent out an email to the company and said, hey, I'm coming in, going on a beer run first. What do we need? I remember thinking like, oh, I'm screwed. I've lost control of this. This is a lot of control. We need to solve this. So I solved it. We put kegs in the fridge. And the tuning of Left 4 Dead is based on people playing it nonstop, literally nonstop, for 2 months straight, drinking beer, hanging out with their friends, playing like you would at home. And so it was always like, and sometimes
everything you guys have ever heard about game development is true. Get paid to sit around and play games.
It's a fantasy land.
Yeah, but right, being like you walk by and you get caught up in somebody else's game because they're just that second away from getting into the safe room and closing that door, and maybe the one guy was all those moments, and we would just keep going for those and you keep testing, like if you die 5 times in a row there, what happened? Like sometimes you feel bad. I saw one playtest where one person jumped off the roof of No Mercy, and then 3 more were like, all right, you're broken. We're not going to look at your playtest. I don't know what we can do about it. It's insane.
There's nothing in the game mechanic you can fix it.
Yeah, exactly. You should be dead.
It's funny you mentioned that because I played an entire level going for the gnome achievement.
Yes.
And so I carried the gnome throughout the entire level, and I died within feet of the helicopter. And my friend walked over, like in the game, walked over, and I was frustrated. I was super frustrated because this is a hard achievement to get. And his character kind of bends over and picks up the gnome, and he says, "Don't worry, I'll get the gnome." And he gets in the helicopter, gets the achievement.
apocalypse.
So I totally, yeah, so those moments are critical. So, again, sort of down the line, there's certain tropes, I think, in the zombie genre, and not every game or movie uses them all, like we talked about fast or slow zombies. The guardian aspect, or the survival aspect, or the vengeance aspect, or the, I am legend aspect, whatever. If you had a trope you could kill, like it would never appear again in the zombie genre, and you may not have one, what would it be?
Well, mine's glitchy zombies, which we've already I'm hopeful I can kill that. I don't know, I guess we didn't really think about tropes with the development of DayZ. Like I say, it was kind of built around those psychological training tools. So there was no real effort put into balancing or anything like that. And I think that's what we were talking about before, how pretty much when I made DayZ, it was pretty much breaking all the design lessons that I'd ever been taught. And then this is what kind of ended up. So I think, I don't know, the hardest thing that I have to deal with in terms of tropes is people who say, I want fast zombies or slow zombies. I really just don't want glitchy zombies. I don't care whether they're slow or fast as long as they just work. So,
No, that's fair.
I'm with you for what it's worth. All right, so at first I didn't know how I was going to answer the question, but it suddenly dawned on me. And this is something that if I could do State of Decay all over again, I hope we can do, but how many zombie games are we going to play and zombie movies are we going to see where when the zombie outbreak starts, the lead characters are like, God, I have no idea what's going on here. These guys want to bite me, what? Look, the zombie, as you say, right? Zombie lore is here to stay. It's a core IP, it's a core genre, both in the game industry, the movie industry. It's part of our culture. It's part of who we are.
Actually, an interesting point. Could you raise your hands? How many of you in the audience have a zombie apocalypse plan?
Yeah. Of course you do.
Well,
That's a shockingly small number.
it is actually. Some of you need to talk to the person next to you and raise their hand.
So I want to make a zombie game where, the hero, the first character, as soon as he sees somebody coming to bite him, he's like, shit, zombies, I knew it!
Follow me.
For getting rid of tropes, it's hard. Everyone keeps surprising me with stuff. Like if you would have told me State of Decay is coming out, clearly we're done with zombies. We don't need another zombie game. I sat there and I played that, and I was excited. It was fun. But one you mentioned, I Am Legend is a vampire book. Okay. Fair enough. The movie was for crap. It had nothing to do.
I was speaking specifically of the lone guy. There's no one else, but then suddenly there's one other person.
That's fine.
That is a trope that does come up.
Right.
Chet, words later.
Yeah, the thing that I'm just personally trying to avoid, and I hope I don't get called out on it if I actually forget all about this, which is probably the zombie being the thing that you need. That you think is already dead, and it's not at the last second.
Right.
It's okay if you reach over to get the keys, and another zombie pops out of the window, that's fine.
Right.
Don't leg up on this.
Well, I know, because that's how Lee got big.
But I'm trying to avoid it, but...
No, that's a good one. So, last question before we jump to Q&A.
I had one.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. I thought you were speaking for I'm a terrible moderator.
Well, first of all, I love most tropes. So, Shaun of the Dead, awesome movie, hilarious and funny. But the one thing that just destroys me every time I see it in the movie is the classic scientist in the lab coat scene trying to explain what they know. I can't. It just kills it for me.
But I think as well, when you look, based on all the answers I hear here as well, it reminds me, I think I did, early on when DayZ was picking up, I did this interview with this BBC journalist, and he said to me, isn't the zombie are we done with zombies yet? Why is this popular? But then, like, you look at the games that are coming out that can continually surprise you, like there's that The Dead Linger as well, another game by Sandsweep Studios, that people are definitely worth checking out. So they're taking again another whole look at like this massive procedural world and stuff like that. So it's kind of like, I guess maybe one of the tropes that we all want to kill is this whole, oh, aren't we done with zombies?
Yeah, that's a totally fair, because like Last of Us, you know, when most people talk about Last of Us, I was like, oh, so it's a Clementine by another name. And it's a wonderful game, and they came up with a unique explanation for zombies. So I don't think we're done. And that's actually the final question before we open up to Q&A. It's like, where do you think we go from here? You know, is it going to? I think there's plenty of stories to tell. So what do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I'm pretty focused sort of on my project. So in terms of, you know, what we want to do is we want to sort of, again, continue exploring that psychological element. And I think there's, from my perspective, there's just a lot of interesting stuff happening in the zombie genre that I think is really good for gamers. I think the technology's there now to really explore a whole bunch of different aspects. Like you can see from this table, all the different spectrum kind of ways that we've got at the moment for exploring it, and then you've got other projects like, you know, the Dead Linger that are exploring other areas as well. So I think as long as we all just keep doing that, then it's going to be fresh, right?
Yeah, I mean, the answer to the question, are we done with zombies? I mean, clearly not, right? Clearly not. It's
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, right. You know, for us, the future is just getting closer and closer to letting you put your survival plan into place and simulating the apocalypse, right? We want that to be a completely free-form experience that you know, will react in a believable manner, so that you don't have to sit around and talk with your friends about what you would do. You can actually go try it out, see how it works out. I mean, that's a huge amount of simulation, and you know, we're several years from actually kind of achieving what we'd ultimately like to achieve with that. But I think, you know, each step gets us closer, so that's what's exciting to me.
Yeah, I mean, to that end is just we're taking a look at all the community-made stuff that we see in our game, and all the campaigns, and seeing, you know, it's always
Giant dinosaurs.
Yeah, or like the localized version of this is their town, and this is their town in the apocalypse, and you see so many just really great little takes on it, and little fun things. And I mean, I've played the game for thousands and thousands of hours, and I'll still go play these new campaigns and have a new experience, and it's still fresh.
While drinking beer.
Yeah, exactly. It was purposely made so that you could drink a beer. Versus we have a 15-second respawn, just so you can have a sip of
What that should be, that's a game development. You should do a PAX Dev talk. Literally, just on
No, it's, I think calling zombies a genre in the game in and of itself is sort of odd, because you can apply so many, it's a state. It's
No,
a state
yeah, that's
of the
great.
world, and you can sort of attach a genre to it, you know.
Maybe horror, it could be action, or it could be
Or it can be romantic comedy,
Yeah.
bodies. I mean, you can attach
No, you're right, that's
different
great.
stories to the state of the world, and I think that we're still exploring that. There's still new fresh stuff going on all the time, so I don't see it coming anytime soon.
Yeah, to me, I just want people to keep pushing it. You know, it's like we're at Telltale, we're really trying to push the storytelling aspect, and you know, what we're doing isn't perfect, and we still are finding flaws all the time, and just trying to refine that and, you know, get better and better. And I think the tools for simulation are getting so much better, and it just seems like, you know, obviously, like you said, they're not going anywhere, and it just seems like we're still almost at an infancy of zombies in games where they're really coming to life. And it seems like there's so much potential out there. You know, 5 years from now, with the stuff you guys are going to be doing, it's just going to be insane, and we wouldn't even think about now. But really, just harnessing all the new power we have and all the new tools to just keep it going and make it even more realistic.
Awesome. Okay, so at this point, we have about 10 minutes for you guys to answer questions. There's a microphone right here. There's a microphone right there. If you'd like to ask our panelists any questions, please line up at the mic. And unfortunately, like I said, because we have 10 minutes, I do have to clear the room, so I'm going to be pretty crisp on that. But